Hello fellow cultivators, welcome to the last complete build guide for Tale of Immortal, and this video we are going to talk about wind build. And as usual, we will first describe in general what is wind build is focused on, or let's say supposed to be focused on. And by doing that, we will talk about Whirlwind mechanics, and we will talk about these three special mind skills and how does the wind build is supposed to be revolved around Whirlwind, just like fire build are revolved around fairy flames, and lightning are centered around lightning bolts. However, wind build is a little bit special compared to lightning and fire, which are very straightforward, and that's mostly because Whirlwind itself is okay, but not super powerful. But instead, each of Wind's active skills like martial spiritual skill, special skill, motion skill, and even ultimate, some of them are extremely powerful and in their own way that is not related to Whirlwind the mechanic. So then we will just basically talk about what are the each of them, introduce all of them, and out of them, for example, for the spiritual skill we will especially talk about wind slice, and for special skills, apart from those four continuous ones, we will talk a bit first because they are related to Whirlwind. And we will then especially talk about Windbound, and then motion skill, you know what it is, and ultimate, which is this one is very special. So after we introduce everything, you should have a basic idea about how wind build works, and then we will go to other stuff, like rewrite destinies, which in general aren't that important. Now, and finally, actually, since we have already made those, infographics for those builds. So we'll just go to the infographic, just make a summary of those builds. And I know this will be only for this video instead of for all other 11 build guides. That's why I was thinking maybe after we finish everything, we'll make one more video, just quickly go through the infographics so that we know what are the key points of all the 12 different elements. So that will be everything. So let's start. So just like what we talked before, wind builds are supposed to be centered around this one mechanic called Whirlwind. And what are those? So when we use the wind motion skill, you can see that in the 8th subskill, every 0.49 seconds, the tornado will generate a whirlwind on its center. And this kind of subskills are there in many wind skills, for example in this ultimate, and if I'm not using special, almost all the other 5 special skills can generate Whirlwind. And so let's first use our wind motion skill here. So this is our tornado, but you see there's also this white wind coming, which are tracking the enemy. So those things which are still attacking the enemy, these are the whirlwinds. And if you hook your mouse onto this skill, on the right side you can see below the spiritual wind, there is whirlwind special effect. Basically, a whirlwind lasts 5 seconds and move forward, and dealing a small amount of wind damage for every enemy it hits, but it lasts in 5 seconds, and you can generate a lot of whirlwind on all of them. If all of them attacking the enemy at the same time, then at each second you have a lot of whirlwind attacking the enemy, so your most important use is to increase your attack frequency. And for let it be used, you want your whirlwind to track the enemy, and to get that you need this, a wind mastery. So wind mastery, the most important subskill here is the 10th one. Whirlwind movement speed increased by 360, and each whirlwind automatically chase down a nearby enemy. So this automatically chase down a nearby enemy, which means if there's one enemy on the ground, all the whirlwind you generated will come to that enemy and keep on attacking them, lasting for 5 seconds. And as I mentioned before, you can generate a lot of whirlwind, and this is your way to keep a very high frequency. And this is also the reason why in the fire tornado build, where you just use the wind motion and a wind mastery, so that you can generate whirlwind, and all of those whirlwind will attract the enemy and then keep on attacking them, which triggers the true damage you applied from your palm, internal injury palm, and then you can use a fire rider special skill to generate fairy flames in order to amplify the damage. And that's how fire tornado build works. And so that's the thing about whirlwind. So from an attack point of view, it is very strong because it gives you a lot of attack frequency. Now the only problem is, without the true damage thing, the all those Whirlwind, them itself the damage is too low. Like even at Transcendent, it's doing 600 per second. That's very, very low. So if you are using a standard wind build without true damage against any enemy, you just feel like I'm generating a lot of Whirlwind, but it's still very slow because unlike Fairy Flames and Lightning Bolt, in the secret menu of Fire and Lightning, every time you generate Fairy Flame, you increase 8% damage. Every time you generate Lightning Bolt, you increase 1.8% of damage. However, in the Wind secret menu, there's no such thing. So there's no such thing like every time you generate a Whirlwind, you increase your damage. Instead, what it has is the 10 sub-skill here. Every time a Whirlwind is generated, your damage taken minus 25% for 2 seconds. So yeah, you do not increase your damage, but it does make you more tanky. So that's the main difference there. And to be honest, that is not a great thing, because Wind build is just really lack of damage. And it's the one thing it does not lack is damage reduction mechanic. There are so many different ways you can avoid damage in Wind build. So this sub-skill, it just feels like it's good to have it, and if I throw it away, it just feels like, oh, I'm missing something. But even if I have it, just does not, it's not that great. And because of this, Whirlwind isn't that great in attack if you do not have true damage. It also isn't that great in damage take defense, so in damage reduction. And that makes Whirlwind somewhat, how to say, in Chinese we have this word called jilei, which means the bones of the chicken, which means like if you throw it away, it feels like it's a waste. But even if you eat it, it's not that tasty. So this is the awkward part of Whirlwind mechanic, and and that's why even though you can, I mean, to be honest, if you are playing Wind build, you should still try to use a Wind Mastery because those attack frequencies are still very nice. But you probably want to use something like Fire Secret Menu or Lightning Secret Menu combined with either, if you're using Fire, of course, Fire Motion. If you use Lightning Secret, use Lightning Special Skill. But then you feel like, am I really doing Wind build, or am I actually coming to a Fire or Lightning build? And that is the awkward part. So in this case, I am still using the Wind Secret Menu and Wind Mastery. And don't worry, there is ways to make Wind build damage better. It's just not as great as you use Fire Secret Menu, but it's still good enough. But apart from those, there's nothing much to say here. Now let's look at Divine Power. So there's nothing, okay, I'm looking at feats, of course. Now let's find the Wind Divine Power here, yeah. So look at this, there is Wind point added critical resistance, that's not a point. However, there are two things here. There's one thing really important here, that is, if the wind stat reaches 950, so the 10th one, or special skill with doge effect, will actually gain 8 more doges. Basically, you add more 8 doge when using continuous skill. And here, they are talking about two things. One is doge, one is continuous skill. And this is the time when we come to wind special skills. So, out of all the 6 wind special skills, there is one Windbound, which is no standard one, and Sweeping Wind is also standard one. But other 4 skills are all continuous skills. So in the Fire build guide, we already talked about what does continuous skill mean. Basically, you need to press and hold down the RMB button to continuously cast the skill. The moment you release your button, the skill just finishes. So of course, if you want to maximize the damage of this skill, you want to keep on continue holding it because it does not cost you more mana. The mana it costs is just at the moment you press down the button it starts, and then of course the longer it takes, you can say it is more efficient in the mana use, right? So that's one thing. And another thing about wind special, this for continuous compared to fire, the fire one you can extend the duration after the whatever is written there is finished, but after the extension you enter the weakened mode. Wind does not have that mechanic, and instead what it has is all the 4 continuous skills. If you look at them, there is always this one sub skill. For example, here, where is it? Can't really see. That's interesting. Okay, the 4th one. After you begin casting this skill for the next 7 seconds, You will dodge the first 6 coming attacks. Basically allows you to dodge 6 times, and with the wind divine power, you increase the 6 times plus 8, so 14 attacks. So this allows you to, where you're casting your special skill, you can dodge 14 times, which is quite nice. That's what I'm saying. Wind have all kinds of ways for you to reduce damage, and it is there for all the 4 special skills. So when it says this, you might give you this weird impression that, okay, I need this skill to help me to dodge attack. Does that mean that I cannot move? Which is not the case. You can still freely moving around, and your agility is not even reduced when you're casting the skill. So don't worry about that. And finally, if you look at all the 4 special skills with the continuous one, they also have another common sub skill that is where is it? Here, for example, the last one. For the duration of the continuous skill, every 0.5 seconds, you have 50% chance to unleash a Whirlwind. Yes, all the 4 special skills where you are casting those continuous skills, every 0.5 seconds, you can unleash a Whirlwind forward. And even for this one, which does not have that, but it does have, when the wind disappears, release 6 Whirlwind. So all 4 of them can generate a Whirlwind. That's what I'm saying. The wind build is designed so that your special skill can generate a Whirlwind, your martial skill can generate a Whirlwind, your motion and ultimate can also generate a Whirlwind. That's why I say designed around Whirlwind. So now let's look at each of the 4 continuous special skills. The first one we're talking about is Wind Roll, and the base duration is 2 seconds. However, for every single buff you consume, it will increase the duration for 1 second. And at a Transcendent, you can have a lot of stacks of buffs, so 16 stacks, as you can see on top of my head, and also here you can see 16 stacks of buffs. And this means I can cast this thing for 18 seconds. So I press down my mouse button, and you can see this is my thing. And you can see I can move freely, and also I can change my mouse so that this wind is casting every, for example, you can use this way to clear up the entire screen, right? And also when there's only one, you can also just keep it like this. And now it stopped. And you can see, if you pay attention just now, once it stops, the cooldown starts. So before it stops, while I am always continuously using it, for example right now, you can see the cooldown stays at 2 seconds, right? And I now stop, and now it comes back. The reason why the cooldown of this skill is so low is because first we have basic cooldown 11.2, and then you have minus 3 seconds cooldown in sub skill in the 5th one. That makes it 8.2, and then you got 25% cooldown from your mastery in general. And more importantly, the 10th skill. If this skill is cast when there's only one enemy, the cooldown of this skill minus 4 seconds. This sub skill, it is the type of sub skill that can let your RMB reach 0 cooldown, if it is not a continuous skill, of course. And in this case, if it's a continuous skill, there's no point for you to do that. And in order to reach 0 CD RMB, you need plus energy 3, and etc, etc. So we don't have that, but still, that makes this skill have very low cooldown. So 2 seconds cooldown and 18 seconds of duration. You can imagine you are almost always casting this skill. You can keep this skill casting all the time. So it is a very good skill, and also the way your casting skill is like this, and you can keep yourself quite far away from the enemy, and also you can easily clear up the board like this. So it is very nice to use. Only thing is you have to use it with the buff type of spiritual skill to make sure you have enough stack of buffs, so that to increase your duration time. The second special skill we're talking about is Sandstorm. It is also continuous skill, but the base duration is 5 seconds. So it is actually much shorter than what the first one we talk about. And but the way it is actually quite similar. But also in the 9th sub skill here, if this skill is cast when there's only one enemy, the duration of this continuous skill is extended by 4 seconds. So expecting 9 seconds of duration of this. And yeah, let's use this. And you can see it's quite similar to the previous one. It's a bit thinner, yeah, but that's basically it. And it is still quite nice to use it. And yeah, 9 seconds later, as you can see, we have about 6 or 7 seconds of duration cooldown. That's because we do not have a mastery equipped, and also this do not have that minus 4 seconds when there's one enemy. And even though you might feel like, okay, this one have much longer cooldown, right? And also the duration is not as long. It is maybe sounds like it's worse than the previous one. Well, not really. And the way it is because you can see that it does not. So first of all, it works with headwind, which is a debuff, and also it does not detonate those debuffs. So which means you can use your LMB to. You can see the enemy got the debuff, 13 stack debuff, and there's also this little yellow thing below it. And the debuff does is reduce the enemy's speed. So with all of this debuff on the enemy cannot move that fast. So it is much easier for you to track down enemies, let's say, if the enemy can move. And another thing is, of course, within this, you can see on the second sub-skill, the skill has 30% more damage to enemies inflicted with headwind. So its damage is 30% higher, and notice that it is 5,000 per second. And 30% higher, which means that's about 6,500 per second. So the damage of this is much higher compared to the previous one, which I think is 3,000 something. And yeah, in that sense, actually I consider Sandstorm one of the better special skills if you want to use a continuous one. Especially the reason why I do not equip a mastery in this test, in the showcase, is because we have the, let's just put on this. If you look at finding swifter, so here I come to the late end game stuff, which is transition set effect. The second set, the 2 set effect is at 70% higher HP. Sandstorm duration is double. So yeah, with this 2 set effect, it makes your Sandstorm double the duration. So previous we already know it's 9 seconds, since it's 5 plus 4, right? And 9 multiplied by 2 is 18 seconds. So it becomes the same duration as Windrow. And also the damage higher. Look at this, 3,000 damage. And here is 5,000 multiplied by 1.3, so 6,000. So higher damage and the same duration if you have the 2 set effect. That's why Sandstorm is better than Windrow in late game. In early game, I would say Windrow, let's say early game, middle game, because you do not have the 2 set, Windrow have a longer duration. But on the other hand, if you are not in the game, you do not have 16 stacks. You see, in the middle game, you maybe have 8 stacks, and that means your duration is still somewhat similar to Sandstorm, which can simply reach 9 seconds duration easily because you don't need any stacks. That's why Sandstorm is actually the better one throughout the game compared to Windrow. The next special skill is Whirlwind. Again, it works with the buff, Spiritual Wind, and it's the same thing. It consumes the buff, each of them increase the duration, so this can also have pretty long duration. The only difference between this one and the first one is the way the skill works. So the skill works like this. Let's first give us some kind of buff. As you can see previously when I use it, without enough stacks of buffs, it lasts pretty short. But now it will last much longer. So this is how it looks. The problem is it moves really slowly with your mouse. So it is good if the enemy is not moving like this. But if the enemy moves fast, this skill cannot track the enemy that easily. And that is the main problem of this skill. The fourth one, Reaving Wind. Again, pretty similar to the third one, that it is area, not one single lens, but it's one area thing. But also it has basically 5 plus 4, 9 second duration without any, you don't need to care about the buff or debuff. So that is one good thing. The problem of this skill is, if I'm using it now, you can see it summons all those little things. And it feels like all those ones is not really hitting the enemy if the enemy is smaller, right? That is the problem. And once it stops, it generates 6 Whirlwind. And you can see those Whirlwind is not even tracking. Okay, I'm not tracking part maybe because I did not equip a mastery. But that's another thing is, this does not have generated Whirlwind where you are casting it. So if you are based upon Whirlwind, it's not that great at generating it. It's only generating Whirlwind after it finishes. And the best way of casting this is probably put your mouse a little bit further away from the target so that all the rotating wind can hit the target more easily. But now you can see that if I keep my mouse here, all my LMB attacks, if I'm using Wind Slide, they are sticked here. They're not hitting the enemy, right? So that is the main issue of this. It's basically unusable in late game because you want to use Wind Slide as your LMB for sure. So we have spent quite some time talking about the 4 continuous skills, and basically these 2 are better than these 2 just because the way the skill works. And also Sandstorm is better than Windrow, especially better once you have the 2 set. Or let's say 4 set, because the 4 set will make the Sandstorm dealing higher damage for enemies further away. It's not that useful, but it's something, okay? And that's enough. Now let's talk about these 2. Then these 2 special skills are very good. So let's first start with Windbound. This skill is single-handedly makes this entire sub-skill that Whirlwind, every time you generate Whirlwind, your damage taken 25% useless. Because this skill is much better in order to reduce enemies' damage. And if you have seen the, can you tank the boss in this game, that is one of my videos about what are the damage reduction modifiers and how do you make yourself tankier. This and a middle game wind build can already make all 5 RMBs deal 1 damage or 0 damage to you. It is that great. The reason why this is good, so look at the 6th sub-skill. Every time a stack of, no, not that one, of course. The 10th one. After this skill hits an enemy, for the next 8 seconds, the enemy damage minus 15%. So first of all, 8 seconds, not 2 seconds, which means this can much easier to stack. Second, it might feel like it's 15%, that is 25%. Now the thing is, the way this skill works, it generates 8 storms spinning around, and each time any of the storm hits the enemy, this thing will trigger once. So the most likely case, you use this skill once, and all the 8 storms hit the enemy, and enemy damage are reduced to 1. And yeah, of course you want the 12th sub-skill. If this skill cuts when there's only 1 enemy, Storm will spin out 100% faster, which means it will not only hit the enemy twice, which means higher damage, but also much easier to make the enemy's damage goes to 0. And let's take a look at one video that how strong this thing is. So here we are not using anything, and we are using our ultimate so that you can see how much little damage I take. Look at the purple number jumping out of my head. 100, now 80, 60, 26. And you know how difficult in general Li Zhu is if you have played against him in Chaos. Come on, look at this damage. I have no stats as well, remember. And welcome back. As you can see, without any mind skills, the only thing I got is this Wind Mastery just to track the enemy so that it's faster to finish that battle. But to be honest, I don't even need it because I have the true damage palm. But to be honest, I don't even need that because this special skill already reduced Li Zhu's damage to 0. I'm not taking any damage. I can just take my time, easily defeat them. So this skill is crazily good. And that's what I mean about that. You don't even need to care about Whirlwind. Just Wind have so many good active skills. So that's the thing. So that is one thing. Now let's go to the last special skill. I can't imagine we have already talked so long about special skills only. However, this one is also interesting. So let's go to the arena first. So first of all, let's see what does this wind skill do. This thing, that's what happened. Yeah, and you can see it has very short cooldown, right? And I'm not even having blood energy. This is again because it has a sub skill. If this skill comes when there's only 1 enemy, cooldown minus 4 seconds. And because this is not a continuous skill, so ideally, theoretically, you can reach 0 cooldown RMB build using this skill. So it is an option. I usually don't do that, mainly because unlike Blade, right? It has very good 0 cooldown. And this one, even if you have 0 cooldown, because the way this skill works is like generating wind like this, it's not that great. To do the 0 CD RMB build, you want the army to be as simple as possible. And this thing takes 6 sweeping winds. It's just already too fancy, let's say it that way. So it isn't that great. But another reason about this is So the fourth sub-skill here, if this skill is cast when you have 6 stacks of Spiritual Wind, you generate 9 Whirlwind around yourself. So now you can see I have 13 stacks. And this is a 9 Whirlwind generated around myself and also hitting the target. And it's supposed to be really good, right? If I have 0 cooldown, because I can keep on generating the 9 Whirlwinds. The only problem is, if you have, as you can see, even now I do not have 0 cooldown. It's not that easy to generate 6 stacks of, if you're focusing on this, my stack number here, it is not that easy to generate 6 stacks where I'm cast every time I cast my RMB. And also, there's this one sub skill to make you increase your agility, and yeah, it can make you extremely fast. Just look at this. Now, for LMB spiritual skills, there are also 3, just like every single build. We will also showcase the 3 builds, but I can already tell you, use Wind Slice. Wind Slice is the best. Well, however, let's first talk about Windbound. So this is the first LMB skill you will learn, and in early game it will be quite bad, because unlike, you can see now it's really fast, right? Generate 2. But in early game it's really slow, and it is really annoying using this skill. If you use Windbound against Jagu, you will know what I'm talking about. Also, you can see this is the Whirlwind, right? Now, the Whirlwind is coming from the buff Spiritual Wind, because this allows you to generate Whirlwind, have 3% chance. Looks very good, only problem there's 3 seconds cooldown. And also, this Whirlwind does not track the enemy. It does not track the enemy. This feels like a bug, to be honest. And yeah, that makes much worse. Because I think if this bug is fixed, Wind build will be better, because you can much easier generate a Whirlwind, and of course you need to remove 3 seconds cooldown, right? In that case, the faster you attack with the RMB, you generate more Whirlwind, it will be better. But I guess they just don't care about any bug in Wind build. You will understand when I'm talking about motion skills later. Now, the second LMB skill is Wind Edge. As you can see, it's quite simple. You just, this half moon, crescent moon like projectiles, you do it and it will hit enemy, and that's how it is. And it is quite simple, and one thing is, yeah, it does, piercing the enemy, so that's something. But other than that, it's quite bad. Like in general, just no need to use this. In fact, there is a so-called fourth LMB. That is, when you use this ultimate, your LMB will transform into Arctic Wind Edge. If you look at the right side, unleash Arctic Wind Edge forward. It's basically the same thing as the normal Wind Edge, except the damage is lower. So yeah, it's basically, it's not good. It's just not good. Now the important part, Wind Slice, the best LMB in the entire game. I think you have already seen my recent video about the best LMB build in the game. And yeah, it uses Wind Slice. And I've already talked about why it is so good in that video, but just repeat it. Unlike normal LMBs where you shoot out projectiles, the projectile hits the enemy, either stops there, or they pass through, it hits it once. This one, you generate a Whirlwind, not Whirlwind, that's called Wind Slide, even because it looks really similar to a Whirlwind. And this Wind Slide will stay there for 2 seconds, and continuously do damage to the enemy. This means that the faster your LMB is, the more Wind Slice you can stack at the enemy location and keep on doing damage to the enemy. It just makes your LMB damage much higher. It's higher than any other LMB in the entire game. I mean, special case like internal injury palm against very high defense enemies, that's different. But other than that, it is so good. And yeah, that is another reason why if you use Wind build, your best damage source, it is actually your LMB, your Wind Slide. You should really focusing on reduce your LMB cooldown, including this minus 0.2 seconds cooldown in this skill, because as you can see, the base cooldown of this skill is 1 second. It's one of the longest ones because it is powerful. And with minus 0.2 you become 0.8, and with all the LMB cooldown modifiers in your mastery, in your Nether bird, again, you can't use martial skill specialization because this is not a martial skill, it's a spiritual skill. It's only played in the game, these two are different. But you can always use, lightning LMB, some kind of motion skill and ultimate to make your attack even faster. And that basically is what I said in the other video. Best LMB skill in the game. But even with the standard wind build, this is still your main damage source. And yes, make sure you're using a wind slice and make sure you have fast attack speed. Now goes to motion skill. I think I don't really like this motion skill, even though it is one of the best ones in the game. And you know why? I've already talked about it. It is actually a bug in the early stage of this game. So if you compare this one, for example, to the Earth one, let's say, both of them allows you to enter this invincible mode, so-called invincible, but actually if the enemy has this boar, female Dangan, they can grab you. Apart from that, you are invincible. But when you are using the Earth motion skill, you cannot use any other skill during that time. When you're using wind motion skill, you can still use your martial skill, special skill, and everything during that time. And this is so unfair. Like, Earth is so... how to say? Earth is so undertreated by the game. Like, Earth has a invincible motion skill, Wind has one better. Earth has a damage reduction special skill. 40% damage reduction feels like so good, but Wind has one better. And Earth have a really good LMB skill which can have really high damage if you are close to the enemy, and Wind still has one better. So Wind is better than Earth in these active skills in every single way.
So you're an alien, I guess. How does that help us?
I'm basically better than you at everything.
Just once I'm gonna find a planet of people that are worse than me at everything. A whole bunch of functional idiots. I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna be their Superman.
Isn't that Canada?
You shut your goddamn trash mouth.
But yeah, so that's the thing. In the early stage of this game, when you are using the wind motion skill, you can still custom skills. But when NPC are using it, they cannot custom skills. So it is clearly a bug. But so the developers, they want to fix it. So back then, we don't even have this part of the, not even talk about Chi, we don't even have Muxian. Then when they added Muxian region, they added this thing called, what is it called? This thing, Rule Field. If you remember, 3-wind Rule Field allows you to using skills while using a continuous motion skill. Yes, so they fixed the bug, and they try to keep a way for you to use the standard wind motion thing by using 3-wind Rule Field. And the players get riots because players are bad. They don't know how to play Chaos. They don't know anything. And yeah, they have to reverse the change, and now even NPCs can use wind motion skill and use their other skill anymore. But it is technically, I do not like it. And well, still, min-max point of view, it is very good. It allows you to be invincible, that's one thing. Also, it has very high damage, 38,000 per second for the tornado if you have the sub skill. So definitely get that sub skill. But just from a wind build itself, the main point using this motion skill is actually generate Whirlwind. That is what I like about it. It's one way to generate Whirlwind, so that you don't need to use one of the special skills or use a wind ultimate. You can still generate Whirlwind to keep the attack speed simply by a tornado skill. So that is that. So for ultimate, I think we have already talked about the two old ultimates in my ultimate skill guide. So I won't go into too much detail, just to say Arctic Storm, it is a simple, normal ultimate. There are two good things about it. One thing is that you almost don't need any starting trigger condition, because the trigger condition, you kill enemy within a small range. You don't even need to use wind skills, and that is makes it very easy to trigger for any other build. Now in this case, because I am in the arena, of course I can't trigger it, but it is very easy to trigger. That's one thing good about it. Well, the second thing good about it, it can generate Whirlwind very fast, about both 80% chance to generate at the center of the storm and also underneath yourself every 0.5 seconds. It's one of the best way to generate a Whirlwind. Alright, let's use it at once. So we use this thing. Forget about this, it's just Gochen. So, and this blue one is the giant Arctic Storm. And also you can see all those Whirlwind is generated from the storm and also from myself. And it will hitting the target all the time. So it is really really easy to generate Whirlwind with this skill. And this blue storm slowly sweeping towards it. And this is, you can see that the Whirlwind itself is not doing that much damage, right? Even to this transcendent target. So you need somewhat 2 damage thing. This I think is another way to clearly show it. And also once this thing disappears, then that's the problem. And also Whirlwind is really taking a lot of your geographic resource. And it's going to get my thing very slow. So change your geographic thing to low if you want to use the Whirlwind build. So the second ultimate, Temporary Wind Field, is one of the most special ultimate in the entire game because it transforms yourself. And also, it allows you to enter this bullet time, which means you are super fast and everything else, the time literally gets slowed down. So if you use this ultimate, and once you finish the battle, you will realize it shows much shorter time compared to what you actually used in real life, because the in-game time just becomes slower. That's how it works. And it's also very different. So once you use this, you are in the standard spiritual skill is not useful anymore. Instead, you will transform into Arc the Wind Edge, which is quite bad, and you cannot use your special skill. All of them sounds really bad. However, there's one thing, because you have gained maximum attack speed, and also everything else has slowed down. So you actually get even higher than maximum attack speed. So I don't know, is that understandable? But the fact that you already reached 0.1 second to attack speed with this thing, and the whole time is slowed down, so basically makes you even higher attack. And another thing is, even though the transforming LMB skill, it does not change all the sub skills. So if you're using, for example, the Earthquake, which can generate 12 soil balls, look at the 8 sub skill around you, each of them does the same damage. Then with super high attack speed, you can do a very high damage with this skill. And yeah, this is one usually go to the avatar build in my video. Just search avatar or search weird build that actually works. And it can actually create some really high damage builds. So let's try it. As you can see, I use this, everything is slow, and even all those soil balls are slower, but I can generate it in a very fast speed because I'm attacking very fast. And also, I can still use my wind motion skill, by the way. It's not really recommended to use it, just to let you know you can use motion skills. And yeah, it is quite good in terms of damage, and now once it's finished, everything is like that. Also, one thing notice, Whirlwind really blocking your view, right? And it's nice to have water burst. We'll talk about this when we go to the Rewrite Destiny part. And that is now actually, because we have introduced all the skills. So, just as I mentioned before, water burst is in general very good skill, like quality life point of view. But also for wind build, it's very easy, you cannot find an enemy where it is. And with water burst, it's very easy to know, okay, that is the enemy is. So it is extremely good. And also, if you're using wind build, like in general, when you are progressing, you might want to use internal injury palm LMB so that it's much easier for you to progress. And in that case, you want high attack frequency, right? Whirlwind does part of the job, but another part of the job can be done by simply water burst. Because with water burst, even if you are far away from the enemy, you are still doing a lot of true damage. So it is very good and very useful. Now everything else, blood power is always good, you know. And here is the thing, combat expertise wind lightning, I do not recommend this. So this is a no for me actually, because unless you want to use temporary wind field, and in that case you can still easily trigger it if you're using a wind continuous skill. But in general, I don't think this one is that nice. I would rather for you to use this Divinity Sword ultimate, because this will increase your attack speed of your special skill. And how wind slice works, the faster you are, the much more powerful you are. So I would rather to use a combat expertise instead of wind lightning, but what do you call weapon, so that you can use this ultimate so that maximize your speed of your spiritual skill. And I would recommend something like this. I will just show another small video to see. So yeah, it is not as powerful as, you really maximize the speed of LMB in the other video I published before, because I believe in this case, even if I use my ultimate, I'm still at 0.2 seconds speed, not 0.1. That's why it takes about double the time dealing with Li Zhu compared to the maximum case. But still, combat expertise weapon will be the choice. And then it's basically make yourself higher damage and also more damage taken, so that it works well with both these two cases. Like this one, once you have maximized your speed, you don't need a martial skill specialization, so you just need damage amplification. And this one is always nicer with more damage reduction. That's why things like Always Someone Better is pretty good. 30% damage and 20% damage reduction. You just need to cast the thing twice. And Alchemist Dower's Perfection, 25% more damage from spiritual skills, since your damage output is from spiritual skills, so yes, good. And Cloud Piercing Lightning, it's basically 30% damage, which is pretty nice, because Wind build can have pretty high agility, so 30% from there. And yeah, if you want, you can get Murderous Rise. If you're trying to do true damage, you can get Blade of Heavenly Eye, so that's also there. And finally, for damage reduction, Rolling Ward is pretty good, 60% of damage reduction. For the enemy, combined works really well, combined with the Windbound. So that is the main thing. And in this character, I do have no choice left in, but it's not that useful. It's something that you can take, but later on in game, if you want min-max, you can just get rid of it. I mean, you can always change it to something better, like Blade of Heavenly Eye, or Supernova Sword, or things like that. And yeah, that's basically everything. Oh, very importantly, you want a Bluebird and you want 3 martial skill cooldown bonus stats, because you want attack speed. Bluebird, fastest LMB speed, that is there. And finally, this one, you don't need to use 3 Wind, it is still nice to have. But 3 Sword is pretty good since you have very high attack frequency, or 3 Fist is pretty good since you can even more damage reductions. I mean, we have talked about this for many times. And this is the same thing. Gold Chain is good because you give you infinite mana. You don't really have a good way to recover mana in the Wind build. Unlike Lightning, you have Lightning Strike and recover mana, or Summon build, you have Summon Die and recover mana. In this case, you don't have that one, and if you are not using Blood Energy, then I think Gold Chain Soul is kind of okay, because you have so many ways to reduce the damage. You don't need a Xuan Gui Soul. That's why just use Gold Chain Soul, I guess. So that will be almost everything about this build. Oh, right. I have never talked about the transitions, but it's already covered in the transition build, transition set tier list video. But in general, we briefly talk about finding Swifter. It is nice to have the 2 sets to increase the Sandstorm duration. The 4-set effect, it isn't that powerful in my opinion. And the Tempest is just bad. It's just bad. Come on, Whirlwind, bad. Wind Edge, bad. So this is bad. And okay, this is the one thing I should talk about, which I haven't. So we talk about Wind Divine Power to increase your Doge, 8 Doge, right? But in general, you can see something about Wind that with this skill, you are already very safe. Like, even if you didn't hit the enemy did not reduce damage to 1. If you have a Rolling Ward, or if you still have this thing to generate a Whirlwind, you are still very safe. And, worst case scenario, you still got a Tornado to keep yourself invincible. So, and if you are not using a continuous skill, then there's no point of using Doge at all, right? So I don't think you need to use a Wind Divine Power. And instead, because you really lack of damage, that's why I think the best way is use the Feast Divine Power to increase your critical damage critical damage. And then, of course, you need some way to stun enemy. So, Rushing Thunder from the eye, very good to stun enemies, so that to increase the critical power, and it works really well too. I think this is something many, even experienced players tends to ignore because they think Murderous Rite is just 30% of damage amplification, which is really not the case. Just see how fast you delete the HP of Li Zhu when during the 5 seconds of Murderous Rite with 50 Divine Power. So yeah, and also we don't need this 80% damage reduction. As I said, Wind already have so many ways to reduce that damage. This is your better way to increase the damage, unless of course you want to use Fire Secret Menu and Fire Motion. Okay, people, before we finish the video, let's summarize what are the Wind build guide, and also just to use this to showcase how do you use this infographics. Basically, we starting with Wind LMB, and the Wind Slide is one of the best LMBs, so try to maximize the speed so you reach 0.1 second CD Wind Slide. And the LMB can always either apply a buff, Spiritual Wind, or apply a debuff to the enemy. And out of all the RMB skills, you can use 4 continuous RMB skill, which give you 6 dodge, and Wind with the Wind Divine Power plus 8 dodge. That is something important, but also it can generate Whirlwind, which is kind of the central, supposed to be the central concept of Wind build, which can be generated also by Wind Motion skill, Wind Ultimate, and also Sweeping Wind LMB, RMB, which is not a continuous one. So with Whirlwind, with the Min Mastery applied tracking, you can reach very high attack frequency, which is really good with true damage build. And with Wind Secret Menu, every time you generate Whirlwind, you got 25% damage reduction, which is again makes you really tanky. And then now let's look at the other special skills. Sweeping Wind can reach 0 CD, which is okay, and Windbound can give you 50% damage reduction to enemy every time it hits, so it's really powerful, probably the most powerful ones. And the powerful ones, I basically put it into red ones. And Wind Motion skill in general make you invincible, really good. And Wind Ultimate, one of them will give you the bullet time build. So that's basically the summary of Wind build. So yeah, as I mentioned before, after finishing it, we have complete all the 12 martial arts and spiritual roots complete build guide in this game. I might just give another one video to look at other infographics and go through all of them, so that people can have a quick look how to make builds. So that will be everything. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.